It's preparing right now. This always takes a second. I know people are already in there now. So hi, give us a minute. We're figuring this out as always. Got that. So hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Flip Side, and I am your host, Sean Dotson. This is your non-PC, beer-drinking, thrill-of-the-chase talking show. So like always, I always have a good brew, and tonight I'm drinking Desert Fog from Marble Brewery out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this is called, it's a hazy Indian pale ale. So we're going to pour this. I'm going to pop a top. Hopefully you have your beverage of choice. And when I pour this, I'll allow Todd to say hi to everybody in Finlandia.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Glad to see a nice little crowd. Hope it's going to be an enjoyable show. Hope I have what I have to share is informative and insightful and fun, first and foremost.
If not, we'll just make fun. We'll just have fun.
That's great.
So guys, this is episode 6 of Flip the Script, and it is titled Out on the Edges. That is what Todd wanted to call this show. And on this show, this is when the guest then becomes the host and gets to flip it on flip, so to speak. And they get to choose the topic, and we go down that rabbit hole together. Now, we all know that we're going to be talking tonight about Todd's Solve, but I want to talk about something that I've gotten a couple of emails from some individuals that were concerned about sharing solves so openly out on the internet and YouTube that if it is a convincing solve, that they would be concerned that a lot of people would be rushing out to that area and tearing up that land. Now, while these emails have come in and I understand some of these people's concerns, I don't necessarily wholeheartedly would agree that there's going to be thousands of searchers going out there and tearing up the land out there. I think that most of us searchers are pretty mindful of Mother Nature and taking care to go out there and try and do our best to leave no trace other than a footprint or something out there. People hopefully aren't taking their beer cans and throwing them out there if you're having a beer out there, guys. We know there's been some incidences of people going out there and actually digging pretty big holes out there. That's a pretty small percentage of the community doing things like that. So while I understand where these people are coming from, and I wanted to make it a point to ensure that if we are going out there and you think that this is a convincing solve and you want to go out there to Todd's area, just be mindful where you're going and be respectful of Mother Nature out there. So just want to throw that out there and hopefully you guys understand that. So this is Flip the Script. And now I'm going to give the con over to Todd. Todd, you've got the con. Cheers,
Great.
Everyone.
Thanks, Sean. So what I've done is I've put together a presentation, like I was telling Sean a couple of minutes ago, for you, but more probably for me, just to keep me on track and focused on the solution. Let's see if I can get this to go to slideshow.
While you're doing that, I'm just going to say hi to a couple people in the chat room. It looks like in the chat here, it was actually Mama Bear who is the front running bitch. And I know I'm probably going to catch hell for that because Mama Bear is my wife. Yeah. And I want to say hi to Captain Ahab Seeks is in the house, Sir Crow, Jan Schultz, Tamara Lamb, Debbie Teal, Redneck Express, that's Red X, 3D Bronze, Dirk, Hooley, Tony Driver, Tom Sawyer, Mike No Dine, Joel Lewicki, hey Joel, how are you? SC, Craig Carter, William, Anon, RC, that's our good friend over there at Harry's, Jake Faulkner, Craig Carter, Welderon, Evan Penn, Jason Dent, hey Jason, how are you? And Sasha, good to see you. Sledneck, hey Sled, good to see you made another live. Jeff Collins, Ryan Ward, Robert Slinzinski, I always mess that up. 23 Monarca, Belva Jenkins, J.A. Street, CMC, and I think I've caught everybody. Alan K, hi Alan, All Pain No Gain, and Dubair. So there we go. Sorry, Todd, interrupted you there. I just forgot to acknowledge all our good friends there in the chat room.
I'm happy to hear that a lot of people have made it out. So I want to let Sasha know that I have a triangle in my solution.
Oh,
She'll
she
be
likes
interested to know that. Yeah. So,
yes.
okay. So, and then one other thing I have to just kind of something I need to let you know. I'm at our escape room, and we actually got some last minute bookings. So we have a group in right now that are probably going to be getting out in the next 20 minutes or so. And then we've got a 10 o'clock. So what I'm going to do occasionally is I'm going to move back into the office so I don't have a crowd of people coming out behind me and wondering what the heck's going on.
Yeah.
Just
And
FYI.
I got some nice swag from your
I
escape
see that.
room
Yeah,
there.
that's
Yeah, it's
that's the
awesome.
my next big mystery that I have to figure out because Jason, uh, Sean won't tell me where he got it. So I have my suspicions. Okay, so this is called Out on the Edges. And we'll see in a little while why I decided to call it that. What we're going to do is we're going to go over a little bit about myself, then we'll go into my my solution, and then we'll take some questions and answers at the end. So a little bit about me. I grew up here in Michigan, actually right outside of Flint, Michigan. I'm sure you've all heard about that in the news in the last few years. Now I live in the Detroit area. I work for one of the major automotive companies. My degree is in English, and last year, with me and a couple of my partners, we opened an escape room in Ferndale, Michigan, largely or tangentially, I guess, based on my interest
That's a
in the
big
Forrest Fenn
word.
Forrest Fenn treasure hunt. So, because everybody likes puzzles. So just to let you, so that's about me. So a little bit about how I got involved with the chase in the summer, like early fall of 2017. I heard about Forrest on an NPR segment and got mildly interested in it. I didn't go too nuts, but I did start kind of putzing around, looking at maps and that sort of thing. At some point, I came up with a solution that I then sent to Forrest in early October of 2017, and then I promptly forgot all about it. The way I saw it is that was my solution to his little puzzle, and I was content with that. And that's when I started working on the escape room, and I didn't return to the chase until June of 2018 after the grand opening, just to check in. And to my surprise, it seemed like some events had happened where I was like, huh, I wonder if I was right. So that's my background. All right. So before I get into my solution, and this is something I've talked about on Harry's before, if there's one thing you take away from anything that I say, this is what I really do believe. We are looking for a super duper magic bullet place. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's a place that's going to interweave and interlock all of the things that Forrest talks about that seem to be dear to him. You know, and I think we have some ideas on what what those things are, and we're going to find out what I believe those important things are when we get to my ultimate solution. But the main thing is that anytime you're looking for a solution to a particular clue or the overall solve of Forrest's poem, that you have to have reasons why you're choosing that as a particular answer to a clue. There should always be reasons, and you should always keep signs and signifiers in mind, because that's Forrest's main weapon of choice when providing us puzzles and clues. Is he uses language and words and signifiers and signs to point us in the right direction. Okay, so
Semantics or
yeah,
semiotics. Yep.
semiotics. Yeah,
Yep.
so we definitely
Signified in the signifier, right?
yeah. So and I have a submission on Harry's that I submitted about 5 or 6 months ago, all about this. So you'll see that at work in my solution.
Okay. Being an English major, you would definitely know that.
Yeah. I don't know if it gives me an advantage, but it definitely reminds me of my college days. So. All right, let's get into it. So first off, I should tell you that even early on, I started thinking that Warm Waters Halt had something to do with the Continental Divide. And I'll get into the reasons why I think that, because there has to be reasons, right? And if it is in fact the continental divide that he's referring to, there's really only one area in the chase the chase parameters that made sense to me, and that is the circled area that I have on the screen there, and that is that portion of the Idaho-Montana border that is clearly delineated by and defined by the continental divide itself. And when you start to get into Wyoming, Colorado, it's a little bit more difficult to follow the continental divide. And I think that Forrest, when he came up with the concept of where warm waters hauled, I think it was in fact because the place that he had chosen to hide his treasure was very, very close to that uh, that dividing line, and it's easy to find on that Montana border in Idaho. And I also thought, okay, I'm going to kind of limit my scope to regions around Yellowstone, mainly because he's mentioned Yellowstone, but I don't think he's ever mentioned in the actual place or the surrounding areas where I believe he hid the treasure. In his books or in his talking, I think that what he does is he likes to take one place as a sign for another place, and I think he uses Yellowstone as a sign, not as an actual place where it could have been hidden. Okay, so when I started looking, in August, September of 2017, I was looking at maps very closely in this area. And I looked at other places. I looked at Colorado and New Mexico, but generally speaking, I felt like I was being drawn to this area. And then I found a couple of places that seemed to fit the poem, but I wasn't sure where it was leading me. And then something happened. In late September of 2017, on Reddit, and just to let you know, I'm a big Reddit user, and my username on Reddit is also Sykeston. Someone posted a thing on Reddit, on the Finding Fenn's Gold subreddit, called Anagram in the First Stanza, and I'll read it for you. I like armchair puzzles, and I'm not really a boots searcher. I've been studying the poem for a year or so. I don't know whether this will help or not, but here is an anagram I found by using letters within the first stanza. This is as far as I've got. Hidden in National Register of Historical Places, Beaverhead County, Montana. And I saw that.
Is that the whole? I mean, that's not the whole part of it.
It is not.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna talk about this for a minute, because I know that this could seemingly seem controversial, but there's a way to look at this. First off, this is a terribly specific anagram. This is not like the Matizzi anagram, or like it's not even like National Register Beaverhead or National Register Montana. This is a full sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And there are about, I think, 25 letters left over. But here's I think a lot of people, when they were looking at this anagram back when it was first posted, is that they were discounting it out of hand because there were leftover letters, because they think, well, you've got to have you have to use all the letters in order for it to have any kind of meaning. I spent about 2 weeks studying this and trying to fit any other county, any other state, using the letters in the first stanza, and this is the only one that works. Now, there was a couple. I think there was a couple other counties, but they were all buildings, like in towns. Beaverhead County is the only. There's 19 historic places on the register in Beaverhead County, and we're gonna get into it in a second. But there's one other thing I want to say, a couple more things I want to say about this anagram. One is, it came down to me, for thinking about this, that it's so specific that the leftover letters you could just not worry about that, because it is so specific. It narrows things down so much. The other thing is this Professor Rick, who posted this, how long must he have worked on this in order to find this specific sentence in the first stanza. He was either incredibly brilliant or he was leading with it. In other words, he was wanting to find this particular thing in the first stanza. He had to have been looking for it, and that which also seems implausible. Or Professor Rick is Forrest. Now, I don't know, I'm not saying he was, but this particular user only posted this thing and was never seen again. I private messaged him after I kind of said, I think I know what, if this is correct, I believe I know what the place is. He said, well, that's great. Good luck to you. I'm moving on to other projects. So I'll talk to you never, because he never, I tried to contact him a couple more times to let him know I was going to look. He never contacted me. He never responded again. So it got me thinking, if this in fact was Forrest, why would he do something like this? And then I started thinking, well, what was the time and what was happening in around, the fall of 2017? And, he's kind of, we get the impression that he's gotten a little weary about the chase. The second thing is that he was dealing with a lot of pressure about the deaths related to the chase, so much so that the sheriff in New Mexico was, asking him to stop it.
But that's like June of 2017.
Yeah. So this must have been weighing on his mind for a few months. Now, go back and think about the fact that Forrest said, I tried to think of everything. Well, when you're designing puzzles, when we design puzzles in our room, we have fail safes just in case something fails in the room, like some of the electronics. We have switches in the back walls that we can go and we can flip to ensure that the game can continue. What if Forrest knew that somewhere along the way in the future that he might have to pull some sort of trigger to escalate or to get the puzzle moving forward? And if he
why wouldn't he do that just openly by,
I don't think that that's,
you don't think he's done that in kind of removing states like Idaho, Nevada, Arizona?
I think he's done it in phases, but I think that there was one foolproof. I mean, if this was my thing, if I was designing this puzzle, I would most definitely hide something so deep like this crazy anagram that we see on the screen in the first stanza, because then I could release it anonymously. I mean, Reddit was a great, if it was him, what a great place to dump this, because it's almost like the most democratic place, because it's like neutral ground. It's not Kpro's site, it's not Chase Chat, it's not Harry's, it's none of where the usual gang hangs out. Reddit is like, it's like kind of like a come-all. Everybody, and a lot of people who are first getting introduced to the chase often will find the subreddit for the first time. We get newcomers to the subreddit all the time. So to me, this I'm not saying that this is even correct, but what I'm saying is it is a very, very specific anagram.
So based on this anagram, is that what, did you already have a belief on, you were saying your warm waters halt is the Continental Divide?
Yes, but it also has to be. It also has to be other things. But see, now this.
But you need to be able to have the lines cross somewhere. That you've got one singular line, which is the Continental Divide, which is a lot of people have assumed or believed that is the warm waters halt. And who's to say that's wrong? But what you're saying is then taking this anagram, then it gives you an X at least within a general region.
Yes. Yeah. So now take this not as the okay, he's going to base his entire solution around this anagram. That was not the case. What it was a yet another confirmer for me that I was moving in the right direction. Because
will give you confidence. I don't know. I mean,
it's
confirmer confidence. Okay.
I mean, what I'm trying to say is this is a lot of conjecture, and I understand it, but I do have reasons to believe that it could be true.
And what is your definition of conjecture? Some people may not know what that means.
So my definition of conjecture is this is me going off the cuff without any real facts or any kind of it's my theory. It's based
on incomplete information. It's just
absolutely.
It's a
And I
Some people don't
understand
know
that.
what that word means.
Okay. So I just, I don't want people to think, okay, so now I'm just going to, this whole thing is going to be rubbish because, it's this, I don't believe in this anagram, or we don't have to mess with it, but just stick with it, because if you start combining stuff, it starts to make more sense.
Sasha is saying, I can't believe Forrest Fenn has a Reddit. He doesn't even have a cell phone.
Oh, I believe not only has he, well, remember, Reddit is something that he can get on his laptop. I mean, it's just a website like Harry's or Chase Chat or whatever.
You just gotta set up an account. I mean,
yeah, and it's like it's one of the easiest places. You just type in your username, and
if the man can fly a jet plane, he could figure out how to make a thing on a Reddit.
I'm not saying.
I don't know.
And the other thing to keep in mind here is that just because I mentioned Forrest was the one who did this doesn't mean that it was him. Nor does it mean that this is not legit. It's I was wanting just to throw that out there. So anyway, if we're following that line of thinking, you start to look at the National Register. There's 19 places. Every single one of them actually has coordinates. Where you can go to, like Lemhi Pass, Lewis and Clark Monument, all the stuff that is the National Historic Objects. You can go there because
specific county.
In that specific county, yes.
Okay.
There was one that stuck out to me, which was good because I was hoping that it would be this one, because I think I know where it's at. Was the Sheep Creek Wiki Up Cave. You notice there, its address is restricted. If you were to go to the National Register's website, you would not be able to figure out where this Wiki Up Cave is. Okay, we got 10 minutes before the group comes out. I just heard the thing. Okay, so then how do I find out where this Sheep Creek Wiki Up is if the address is restricted? So I started doing some hunting, and I found an actual an article written by an anthropologist from one of the universities in Montana in 1975 on JSTOR or Jester.
I would say JSTOR, but I guess you could say Jester, yeah.
So it was all about this cave. That it was the first time anybody had in any sort of official capacity had investigated or done any research on this cave, and there's photos. So I bought it, I read it, and then based on the photos, I could figure out where I believed this Wiki Up was. I started working off of this, and then the one thing is that there's not very much information outside of this. There's a couple of photographs. What he says, what this Carl Davis says in his article is that they found out a lot of information from a local in Dillon, Montana, an old timer that knew it was up there and kind of guided them to where it was at.
Yeah.
And in this article, there's also a bunch of pictures of artifacts that were found. A lot of arrowheads and various artifacts. They believe it was a Shoshone sheep eater, like the Tuduka or Tukudeka. I don't know how to say the word, but and the crazy thing is that they're not exactly sure how old this Wiki Up is, but they believe it could be somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 years old, and it's still standing.
Wow.
So they turned it into about 6 years after he went there and wrote that article. They turned it into a National Register of Historic Places to protect it, and then they promptly made it secret so nobody could find it and mess with it. So this is the general area, the general map of where we were working, or where I was working with, and I believed it was. And you'll notice here, there's the omega and the inverse omega that is the shape of Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest. Now this area here is all public and private lands owned by different people, and then some public lands. There's a lot of fly fishing that's done in this area all along.
It's really hard to tell without a really good topographical map of that. But
yeah,
all we're seeing is kind of like a basic overview of it. Without seeing the real topography on there, it's kind of hard to tell. But
so then once I kind of narrowed it down, and I thought, okay, this could actually be the place where he hit it. I posted it as Sykeston on Dale's site, October 9th, 2017. And I just said, I thought I would relay something that a user on Reddit submitted. And then I said, I believe I know where it's at in another post. But then those are the kind of responses I was getting. Don't mess with the poem.
Yeah.
Oh, I see Wednesday left in the leftover letters. Does that mean that it's only accessible then? So they were ribbing me, and I had never posted on Dale's site before. And I thought it was kind of funny, but it
doesn't matter what we post it. I mean, if people are just going to tear it up.
I mean, I didn't take any offense to it, nor did I discount my solution. I just, I thought it was funny how people respond, but I stopped. That was the only time I had ever posted
we're
on
getting
Dale's.
very, very similar responses in the chat room about the "Don't mess with my poem" and anagramming and the
Oh yeah,
scrapbook
sure.
that talks about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Okay, so then the following day, I sent this to Forrest. I wanted to write, just in case I'm correct and someone gets there before I do. My general solve takes me to Wickiup Cave in southern tip of Montana, close to the Idaho border. I believe one would need to be there on the right time, at right day at the right time. The sun would shine through an opening in the cave ceiling, marking the spot where you hid the treasure. Unfortunately, I told him I was from Detroit, is a long way from the spot, and it's the wrong season to boot. Anyway, if I'm correct, at least I've documented the solve. Thanks. And that's it. I said, Todd from Detroit. So then after this email was sent, I was done. I just, between October and June of 2018, I didn't even go on any websites.
Right.
And I didn't really care to, because at that point I was like, I think I know kind of where it's at, but that's it. So any questions?
Well, there's one Anon said something about not in a cave, which
this is you'll see this. It's actually not a cave. It's more of a depression or a recession. One of those kind of rock overhangs. So it's, and the other thing, and once we get into the solve, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So what you've basically told, where we've gone so far is that we've got the anagram of the first stanza that kind of gives you the X along your interpretation of where Warm Waters Hall, which is the Continental Divide, and then getting those two things together, it kind of led you, taking that anagram to the National Historical Places within that that specific county to that very specific one, which is very similar to Mummy Joe Cave and those types of things too that we've seen other scrapbooks on. Right. So that's kind of a synopsis of where we're at. So basing on that, you were saying that you sent Forrest Fenn an email stating that, hey, you believed it was here near this Shoshone Sheep Eater Wickiup Cave, as you presented, and that somehow that the sun may be the blaze that would create where the exact spot is based on a certain time of year or day.
Yeah, and that was based on because I believe time is baked into the poem, and the easy way to track time, obviously in the Rockies is with the sun. So, and I'm kind of the little Indiana Jones stuff. So but this is in October. I didn't know much then.
Sure.
Maybe
there's several quotes that any one of us could probably bring up and say, well, based on this and this, that doesn't seem to make sense. But again, our interpretation of Forrest Fenn's words are never confirmation of his intent. So, we all interpret things completely differently. So,
of course,
questions, that hopefully come from the chat room and stuff on this will be based on that as we go, is that we understand we all interpret things differently. This is
totally.
Yep.
Okay. So, in June, we, hold on one second. I just want to make sure this group's not coming out.
Yep. Guys, he's at work here. He's got a group in one of the escape rooms that is coming out. And Todd told me if they do come out, he may move to a back office or something so he's not interrupting that. So
I think we're okay.
Yeah, okay.
Get a couple more minutes. Okay, so in June, after we opened the escape room, I checked back in, and then I found out about the gut feeling, and I was like, well, maybe. And people were talking, well, if you sent your solution to Forrest between, September, August, September, and January,
right in there, yeah.
And I was like, well, hey, you know what? It's a lottery at this point, but maybe I should spend a little more attention to the possibility that I actually might be right. So there's this guy named Living with Whales, Climber Joe in Montana. He's outside of Bozeman. That's done a lot of reconnaissance for people on Reddit to go and investigate their solves. He's an avid rock climber, good guy, trusted amongst the community. And I I didn't really care. I just was like, hey, you know what? Maybe if Living with Whales wants to go and take a look at this place. So I contacted him, and he's like, yeah, I got some time on the weekend, this coming up, it was June 24th. He was supposed to go of 2018.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll try to get down there. He's like, I've never been to this area, Montana. So then Joe and I wrote another email the first time since last October that hey, my colleague Joe is going to go and look at this Sheep Creek Wiki Up cave, and I gave him the details, and and I told him he's going to go on Sunday. So so that was Friday, June 22nd. So then I'm waiting around for Joe, and then Sunday rolls around. He calls me about 11 o'clock at night on my time on that Sunday. And he's like, dude, I'm so sorry. He's like, I didn't make it out there. He's like, I ended up, he was doing business stuff and it got away from him. So he just didn't have time to go down there. He's like, but I'll try to do it next week. And then he said, hey, what we should do is let's not tell Forrest that I didn't go, and just stay silent on it and see if he makes a move.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's kind of a fun idea. I'm like, yeah, let's see. So, while we were waiting, that week, Monday, Tuesday, I was reading the Dizzy Dean thing. And now at this point, I didn't read into anything that Forrest, I didn't think, Forrest was like hidden messages or anything like this. But then the Dizzy Dean thing, I was like reading it, and I was like, man, this is really weird. Like, why would he bring up certain stuff? So one thing you need to know about like my Reddit user account is you can go through my history and you can see all the things that I'm going to have to move because people are coming out.
Okay, go for it.
Hold on 1 second.
So just saying hi to a couple people in the chat room that jumped in here. Craig Carter, Sakar, Susie, good to see you in here. Susie Fenhaven, Gay Delkin. Hey, Eugene, how are you? See if anybody else. Linda Stark, RC. RC's talking to Jan Schultz about coming on the flip side. Okay. I'll have to go back and see what that was about. Lori James, good to see you in here. Quanah Parker, that's one I haven't seen. We all know that or recognize that from one of the scrapbooks and stories in Once Upon a While. Captain Ahab Seeks is back in. Grizzly Bear, that's a different one I haven't seen. Deep Thinker, good to see you in here. Not seeing a whole lot of questions so far. Oh, okay. Iron Will, good to see you. Okay, we've got Todd back. Todd, you got a little bit of glare over your right shoulder there. It's pretty good. If you could, that's a little bit better there. Yeah, we can see you good there. There you go.
This is just temporary.
Okay, cool.
So I start reading into the Dizzy Dean thing, and
there's a lot of people looking at Dizzy Dean. There's
I know, but so this is my take on Dizzy Dean, and you have to keep in mind this is my story as it relates to the Forrest Fenn treasure. I mean, it could be, it could not be. So this is how I read it, right? So one thing about my Reddit account, and remember, I mentioned Reddit, on Dale's site saying, and I posted as Sykeston.
Yep.
And remember, people were kind of discounting me like immediately. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yep.
And so then I started getting a sense he was like, I was milling about, but no one was paying attention to me. And then, he's like, and then I hear a voice, he's hollering down, hey kid. And so I started looking at it the point of view of, well, maybe Forrest is Dizzy and maybe I'm Forrest in this story. And
that's a flip on a little there.
And, and so then he starts to, he's like, and then remember it's time. So remember, it's like, he's saying, and I said, it's late in the season and, I'm not going to get out there this year and it's too far away. And, and he had probably seen that I had not been around for the past 8 months. Now, if it was actually me, I think if I was Forrest, I would have some interest in knowing what I was doing, or if I planned to even go look.
Yeah.
So the other crazy thing is that he decided to use baseball as kind of the motif with Dizzy. And I post about baseball all the time on Reddit for years. As a matter of fact, this one post that I have kind of highlighted here about Ted Williams, he flew combat missions in World War II and he batted 3, almost 400 lifetime.
Yeah.
I had posted that 4 years ago before I even knew Forrest Fenn existed. And all of that stuff is easily available. All I have to do is search by my name and you'll see all of my posts. and he could see that I was an avid baseball, not only a
Sure.
fan, but also kind of a historian. I know a lot about baseball history.
Yeah, I think Forrest is very curious about the people that are in this chase. I'm sure he probably Googles people, just to look them up and find out if they're a
Sure, and
crazy person or legit. I mean, he's got a lot of time on his hands.
And even more so, and I'm not saying it's me, but if it is whoever is the closest, he's probably going to want to know a bit about them anyway.
Sure.
So he had between October and June to formulate some way of being able to send a sign, right? To not come out and say, hey, this guy in Detroit, I think he's onto something.
Yeah.
The other big part about this was the fact that he said, among other things, Dizzy was the last person in the National League to win 30 games in a single season. And then I was like, whoa, Denny McLain was the last person in baseball in the American League to win 30 games in a single season. Yeah. And that was in 1968, the same year that they played the St. Louis Cardinals in the World Series. And then the fact that he decided to use a famous St. Louis Cardinal player from the 30s, it kind of goes in line with the fact that my username was Sykeston, because Sykeston is where my family grew up. My mother's from Sykeston, which is kind of I wouldn't call it a suburb of St. Louis, but it's everybody there is a St. Louis. My grandfather was a lifelong Cardinals fan. So, that's just in all of these things, in him saying, when he said it's worth the money, it was worth the time, for me, I'm like, well, heck, if I thought that I'm in fact correct, and he's trying to send some sort of signal, would be a classic Forrest way to do it.
I think a lot of us do that. It's hard. It's hard not to do that, Todd. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the chat room are probably nodding their heads on other things that we can.
Oh yeah.
I think if what you're saying, if there is a hypothetical lead searcher out there, and I would think that there potentially is, a lead searcher or a lead group or a few people that are probably, got this first couple of clues nailed down, but maybe don't know it for certain until they recover the treasure chest. And there's got to be a way that Forrest Fenn is trying to cryptically talk to those people, but also talking to everybody at the same time and giving everybody the exact same opportunities to interpret his words, but if there is somebody really close, then they may understand quote unquote Fenn speak in a way and be able to parse out I mean, it's like a beautiful mind, they're able to, parse out all the cryptic bullshit out of all this. I mean, who knows?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, and this is how I kind of saw, the Disney article.
Quanah Parker saying in here at the flip side, didn't revised edition of Once Upon a While come out in October 2018. I don't think it fits his timeline to be Todd.
So hold on. The Dizzy Dean article was originally published on Dale's site on June 22nd, 2018.
Yep.
So this is the time. This is actually the same. It was on the same day that I actually emailed Forrest with Joe, letting him know that Joe is going. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So the Dizzy Quanah Parker, we're not talking so much about the revised, then going back into the revised, or that Dizzy Dean story going back into the revised edition to then become 40 stories. I think what Todd is seeing the connections with when it came out, the date when it came out, and everything else. So
well, and not only that, but the whole, the fact that he mentioned the last player in the National League. I mean, he would know that I would know who Denny McLain is. Yeah. I mean, just because of the amount of stuff that I post about the Tigers all the time on the Tigers subreddit.
He could be testing you. Yeah.
So then then Thursday rolls around, June 28th, and he, the famous "Summer is here. How is your gut feeling?" Hopeful. And then his gut feeling is wavering.
Yeah.
Now, remember, Climber Joe said, hey, we should wait and see if if Forrest does something, because we never contacted him. He never knew whether or not
Well,
Joe
that was
went.
originally, wasn't that originally your idea not to say anything though?
No, that was Joe's
Yeah.
idea. When we
Oh, I
were
thought you
talking
said
to
it
him,
was your idea to say,
no,
hey, let's not say anything and see how he reacts.
no,
Okay, sorry.
Joe said,
Okay.
and I liked the idea. So we
Sure,
didn't,
yeah, okay.
he never knew what the outcome for whether or not Joe even went, much less found it or, anything, because we never contacted him.
Yeah.
So then Thursday, he says, my gut is wavering. Now, immediately kind of extending the baseball thing. What does waver mean in baseball? It means to relinquish. It's basically you're waiving your right. It's intentionally relinquishing or abandoning a known right or claim. So then I'm like, holy cow! Is this a way of him saying, why the heck are you having someone else go out and look at where you believe the treasure is? And this is almost like he's wondering what the heck's going on. It's almost like a response to, well, you didn't go yourself. You sent someone else to do it on your behalf.
Yeah. You must not have confidence in your solve or something as well.
And it's it's a very curious timeline. I mean, these things happen in a very short span of time. And a lot of people were like, well, why so early in the summer would his gut feeling be wavering?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, this is crazy. I mean, does this mean something? So then, of course, I decided to go out myself.
Yeah. Better get my ass out there.
Right. I mean, because I don't know if again, I was like, this is crazy, but this is fun because it's like, this is the story as I'm making it to be, and it could be true or it could be not. I'm not so naive as to think that, I'm absolutely right, but I was having fun with it and I'm still am, but that's the thing. So,
yeah.
Okay. So let's get into the actual solution.
Meat and potatoes.
So we've seen this map a second ago. The square area we're going to zoom in on. This is about 60, 70 miles west, southwest of.
You might want to scroll up a little bit. I can't see your square there. Is that possible to do that?
You know what?
I don't know if everybody else can or not.
Is that better?
Yeah, there you go. That's better. Way better.
Okay, so the solve begins where warm waters halt on the Continental Divide, which is right on the Montana-Idaho border.
Okay.
It's in the Italian Peak range. Now, Italian Peak, as some of you have thought of before, and it seems to work for me, is the Berlusconi misquote, the Eisenhower, the hair bald thing.
Yep. That wasn't a quote from him. It was from somebody else.
It was from Silvio Berlusconi. He's the Italian president, and here we have the Italian peak, the Italian head, right? So then over here, so over in this area, there's what's called a breached anticline. This is where erosion or water it exposes folds in whatever created the Rocky Mountains. It exposes it. And then what actually did that was a creek called Dead Man Creek.
Okay.
This is the breached anticline. This thing is massive, and it's an unnamed thing, and it's very remote. It's kind of difficult to get to.
That's not what it actually looks like. I mean, obviously, this is from a Google Earth 3D image, but
I mean, I've seen photos of it where people have been hiking and it's been in the background, but this thing is massive. It's like 1,400 feet high, by over 1,200 feet wide. So it's would be very imposing to see this in person. So what cut that out, and that's
so that is dead where everything's lining up for you. Your starting point, or at least where warm waters halt, is right there on the Continental Divide where Dead Man Creek comes into contact with that, or
Dead Man Creek begins right there.
Okay.
Dead Man Creek begins on
the Continental Divide.
Yes. So for me, it's the warm waters halt is a nexus point where Dead Man Creek, warm waters halt with a dead man. Mm-hmm. Dead Man, the creek halts because it begins. If you're thinking of the warm waters of New Mexico, because this is one of the headwaters of the Mississippi River that empties into the Gulf of Mexico.
Sure. Yeah.
and those warm waters freeze there in the mountains. So there's a lot of different meanings. The concept of warm waters halting takes on a plural meaning, with all of these things kind of coming together at a single place.
And you still think that falls within Forrest Fenn, stating that there are many places in the Rocky Mountains where warm waters halt, and nearly all of them are north of Santa Fe. You still think that falls within that? I think.
Yes, because I think that in that what he's saying in general terms is that there are many headwaters, many creeks,
sure,
that where warm waters halt in the Rocky Mountains, and the vast majority of them are north of Santa Fe, and that's true.
Many of those precise locations along the Continental Divide. There could be many creeks that begin literally along the Continental Divide,
and there's countless. I mean, I guess
there's a few places where creeks are divided by the Continental Divide, and one goes to the Pacific and one goes to the Gulf.
But for me, Dead Man Creek takes on a certain meaning, and so that's kind of the important part. If you're using the Continental Divide, you just can't start anywhere. You have to have a nexus point. And for me, Dead Man Creek made a lot of sense. So Dead Man Creek, it actually flows north, but down the mountain, and it ends up leaving Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest, because it starts this area down here at Scott Peak. This is all Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest.
Okay.
So the creek heads down, and it ends at Big Sheep Creek. Okay. So this is the end of Dead Man's Creek, and then it flows into Big Sheep Creek, and this is called Caboose Canyon, and this is where so just so we're following here, where warm waters halt is it starts on the Continental Divide with Dead Man Creek.
Yep. So is it in the poem for you Dead Man's Creek?
So it's actually two things, because if you look at a map, because I don't have a real good map to show this, but when you take it in the canyon down, it is the Continental Divide and Dead Man Creek, because the Dead Man Creek roughly follows the Continental Divide all the way to this spot.
Okay.
So you're actually taking both. Take it in the canyon down. Not far, but far to walk.
We're not talking about the Continental. Are we talking about the Continental Divide itself? Or are we talking about the Continental Divide Trail, or what?
No, the Continental Divide itself. So, the state line actually runs north right to this spot. Pretty much, it's within a mile or two.
Okay.
And then not far, but too far to walk is because you don't have to go what I just showed you on the map. It's too difficult to get to. You can get back there if you have the right, but you have to go from a different direction. But it's not really necessary to actually begin it at
that nexus point.
At that nexus point, really, where you're dropping in is you're putting in below the home of Brown, which I believe means two things, which is Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest. Beaver. The root or the origins of beaver in German. I think Dale talked about this last year, and you saw that Brown. Yeah. And then also because you're putting in literally below the home of, if you want to use the term Brown to represent the Shoshone sheep eaters, you'd be below their home as well. Right. So a lot of these things
seems like it would fit more with No Place for the Meek. Sheep being meek and.
Hey, if you want to revise
I'm just throwing it in there, going with the whole way. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we're back to the map. But down here where we don't have to go there. It's too far to walk. We don't have to deal with it. Actually, we're coming in from the other direction. We're starting in the little town of Dell. And we're taking the Big Sheep Creek backwater byway all the way to this spot.
To where you theoretically are putting in below the Homer Brown.
Yes.
Yeah. So you look at put in as this may be the actual physical starting point that you go to. Or?
Yes. This is where, and you'll also notice that you're putting in below because the Beaverhead Deer Lodge the borderline ends right there where it's at, but it's still public land. It's not part of the forest.
Sure.
So you're starting in the home of Brown, and then you're going out of the home of Brown, and you're dropping in below the home of Brown.
Below it, as in not in actual.
It's not in Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, some people read below as in south of something.
Oh yeah.
Below can also mean at a lower elevation than, or down from, or something along that line. So you're just, instead of using south theoretically, because you're putting in below the Deerhead Lodge area. Yeah. Okay, I'm following you. I hope everybody in the chat room is following that. So, any
questions?
No, they're chatting away pretty good. There's some comments going on, but they're nothing directed directly at us.
Okay. And also, just for fun, you'll notice that the town of Kidd is right north of there.
Yeah. You got to know that one, yeah.
So this is a picture of the Shoshone sheep eaters.
Looks like a '80s rock band, kind of like Motley Crue, one of my favorites.
So you could kind of see where if Forrest was looking for a couple of different ways to describe the home of Brown, that it could be easily interpreted that way. Mm-hmm. So just so we kind of went through this, but where Warm Waters Halt is a nexus point where Dead Man Creek starts on Continental Divide. Take it, the Dead Man Creek and Continental Divide in the canyon, Caboose Canyon down in elevation but north. Two-quarter walk. You don't have to travel that part of the poem. Home of Brown, outside the boundaries of Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest.
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, so no place for the meek for me. It means a couple different things. One, it's no place. Meek is a lamb, and he likes to use those. I'm going to murder this word, colloquialisms, because like break, step on a crack, break your mother's back.
Yep.
Meek is a lamb. No, it's not. It's not for lambs. It's for big sheep. So you're right there. You're right there at Big Sheep Creek.
Yep.
And it also, when you start looking at this area, when you're actually boots on the ground and you're looking up at this mountain, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. I'll just put it that way. End is ever drawing nigh. Yeah, it happens every day because I believe that the sun plays a role in this. And even more so once I got there, I'm like, oh, geez, okay, so the properties of this place, and we'll get into this. But the end is ever drawing nigh also because it is extremely difficult to find this place, and it feels like it's going to take you forever if it's even there at all. And we'll get into that too. No paddle. We'll get to that later. But you're moving downriver. You're not going this way on your creek. We're the sheep, right? Now we're saying it's no place for the meek. It's for the big sheep. There's no paddle up your creek, big sheep. You want to go downriver from Dead Man's Creek.
Yeah, there's no reason to paddle, is what you're kind of thinking.
Well, and there's more to the paddle that we'll get to.
Okay.
Heavy loads and water high. I think just means right. So you want to go. If you're coming from Dead Man Creek, you're gonna swing a right into here, and then heavy loads of rock carried by the creek when the water used to be high, because that depression, that cave, was carved out over millennia by Big Sheep Creek. So I think he's talking about a past, just heavy loads and water high. I think he's referencing that rock formation.
Okay.
And it's high up.
Yeah. So
these are pictures. This is the person right here, Sean, who sent you my calendar and I'm thinking it might be her.
Oh.
And
okay.
You got a great poker face. I'm gonna figure it out. Sean's got my brochure, and I have no idea how he obtained it. This is my buddy Jay, and we're approaching from we're right.
You put all the pack on Jay. Look at this poor guy.
Oh, dude, he's an army dude, and he loves. I'm like carrying some camera, water, and he's got
water,
and he could camp out there for 3 weeks and be fine. He's a nut. Anyway, so we're right about where Dead Man Creek ends. So we're approaching it from the west. And
Was there a parking area anywhere near where you're at,
there's
or how far
there's
would you walk?
about a quarter mile, but you
Okay.
could park right where you go in. So like literally like right here is kind of in front where you go
Yeah.
in. You could park right here, get out of your car, and no one would see you.
So
You
if this
could,
is the correct solution, we got to look at where we think Forrest Fenn could have
I think
parked. I mean, that's
I think he literally could have parked. Because now another thing I should say about this place, no one, there's hardly anybody ever around here. Like
yeah,
cattle ranchers with big trucks.
sure.
When it's warm, there's some fly fishermen, but outside of that, very, very, very few people.
Sure.
We actually stayed at a cabin that had no electricity and no running water the last time we went, in a valley close by, about 15 miles from here, but it's in the same region. We saw 3 cars over 4 days. 3
Right.
cars. Okay, so
Was it the same car?
yes, over and over again.
They're coming back and checking on you. Was it a sedan? Was it a gold Jeep Grand Cherokee with New Mexico plates? He's checking on you.
So he could have definitely parked right where you go into the forest, and no one would have seen him. I mean, it's a perfectly camouflaged place. So this is Big Sheep Creek on the left, and then on the right,
oh, nice. That looks
this is generally where the cave is. I still to this day, I've been up there so many times, but I still don't know exactly from below where it is because it's so hidden by the.
What if I can ask, from where you're thinking he could have parked the car, where you probably would have parked the car, what do you think the elevation distance is between those 2 points?
I think it's about a 500-foot walk from the road to where it's at.
But like in height wise,
in height,
if you're parking on the road and it's a grade,
it's a 40-degree. It's about a 40-degree grade, so it's steep, and we're getting into this.
Okay.
But it's definitely doable, especially. Okay. So what I would do is I would skirt it. You know, what is that called when you transverse the?
Yeah, you
zigzag.
Zigzag or switchback. Yeah.
Yes. So that's what I do, and it's really not that. If you know where you're going, I mean,
what's the elevation in Detroit?
700 feet.
Okay. What's the elevation here?
7,600 feet.
How are you doing?
Fine.
Oh, okay.
And I'm a smoker.
Right. Putting everybody else to shame.
Well, I mean, you know, it was you know, it's arduous, but it's by no means not doable. I mean, especially
500 feet. You're saying it's not.
I've seen video of you know, him going up and down hills that are, you know, every bit as bad as this, and it's soft, and it's you know, you can take breathers, you rest on a tree, and I mean, you know, I don't think it was
if he took an afternoon to do it, he could have taken his time,
and he knew exactly where he was going. So you know, once I realized where it was, I can get up there, you know, from the road to the wiki up. I could do it in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's not bad.
With rest.
Yeah. How much were you carrying? How much was Jay carrying?
Oh, Jay was carrying 40 pounds on his back. Like without, I mean, we didn't even find the treasure.
On the way out or the way in?
On the way in. So I'm like, why are you already making this harder on us? Anyway, well, that's where, yeah. So this is one of the views from, you know, on your way up. So you can see it's a beautiful area. You know, lots of pine trees.
Sure.
So the first time Sherry and I went in early July 4th of 2018. I was pretty sure I knew where the cave was, but it took us 2 hours. I couldn't find it. We went up and down. Oh, wow. We went up and down this mountain for 2 hours and could not find the cave. And so Sherry at this point saying, I don't think it's here. I'm like, I'm telling you, I know that this cave is here. This wiki up is here. I'm positive of it. And she's like, are you sure? So we walked back out onto the road where you're looking at now. And I pointed, I said, it's right here somewhere. And she's like, okay. So she's a lot better shape than I am. And she's small. She's got a lower center of gravity. So she scurried up the mountain and I'm kind of trailing behind her. And then all of a sudden I hear, Todd, I found it.
I found a bronze box.
So
don't open it.
So this is kind of the approach. This is kind of the approach up. So now our other group is doing the intro video right now. So as soon as they go in, I'll move back out.
Okay.
So this is the approach, and then all of a sudden you start seeing kind of this darkness kind of hollow out
Yeah.
of the trees. And the reason why it's so well camouflaged is because not only is it up, but it's also back. So
Yeah.
it levels off, and it's like it's hidden way. It's like
So
tucked in.
if you're off of it because of that intervisibility line, you're not going to be able to see it. You're kind of
Not at all.
behind it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
So then then you can start making it out more and more.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you find it.
Now, would some people consider that a cave? Like I would consider that almost like an overhang.
It's not. There's nothing to it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like the what they call the Mummy Joe cave. It's not
Sure.
really a cave. I mean, and is Eugene in the
Yeah, Eugene's in here. Yeah.
Like he was just recently at the Mummy Joe cave. Would he call that an actual cave, or would he just call it kind of a rock overhang? Because I know that he showed some video of being there this summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to get his take on that.
Yeah, I just met with Eugene Saturday. We got to sit down here at Three Rivers Brewery.
Oh yeah, I saw that picture. That's cool.
him and Zenda are really cool. We got to sit down and
awesome
for about an hour or so. I wish I had more time to talk with him, but I was on a short leash with the wife.
Right. Okay, so this is the Sheep Creek Wiki Up. This is a photograph I took, and it was really fun to actually see it in person because there was so few documented photos of it online. Right. So what it is once you get up there, it evens out, and all that's flat. It's really a great place.
Yeah. Gay Delkin is asking. Eugene is asking. Overhang. Is it covered up? Was it covered up?
What does he mean by covered up?
It doesn't look like it. If I'm thinking he's talking about a fence there or any kind of debris.
Oh no, this is
yeah.
There's only one sign, and I'll show you the sign in a second. But
okay.
There's no signs really of any.
Right.
There's no trails here. Nothing's groomed. This is a barren place. They don't want people to know about this place because they're afraid that people are gonna. Because if it's 200 years old, I mean, and it's in this kind of condition.
I think it's just this remote condition protects it, which is. Wow, look at that. Now you really get the grasp of how big that is based on you standing there. Like
that's Jay.
your other picture. Okay, well maybe Jay's 6 inches tall and that's really not big. But no, now you really get the scope and the perspective of how big that is. Okay.
Yeah. So, and you notice there's an old fire pit here, and there's some burnt wood, but I think that it's been decades than when that fire was made because again, it's all protected. It's super dry.
Cheers, folks.
And I've been up there when it's raining, and it's like it's perfectly protected from the elements. You'll also notice that. So this is a panoramic, and this is the west side. You taking off? All right. Have a good night. This is the west side. This is actually in kind of a shadow box, and what I mean by that, it's like a 3-sided arena. And once you get into this area and into this shadow box, you can't get any further on the mountain. It stops you. And if you try to go around it, like around the side, and we tried, you'd have to have climbing equipment.
So how does that fit into your interpretation of the directional clues in the poem?
I feel like wherever it's at, the poem takes you to an end spot that culminates into like a place like this, where it's like this is, you can go no further. The end is ever drawing nigh. But once you get there, it was difficult to find, and the end is ever drawing nigh. But there is an end, right? Yeah. And this is the end.
So basically, where you're putting in from there, it's no place for the meek. Your whole interpretation of that, the end is ever drawing nigh. It's boxing you in. Yeah. Like you call it a shadow box. It's boxing you into a very specific location.
Yeah. It's Forrest Portal. Yeah.
So if we're talking about the architect of this poem, who is also a pilot and a military guy, he's going to understand, bearing, distance, everything else, and he's going to, I would imagine, at least in my interpretation of my thoughts, that he's going to incorporate that into his directional clues of the poem. So I like where you're going with this. I like this because it is boxing you into an end place.
Yeah, and it's definitely the end. I can't get any higher on the mountain than this. Yeah. Without climbing equipment.
Right.
Also of note is this area right here. This thing is an enormous tar bolt. This is, I think it's tar. It's what is it? Bitumen. I think it might be pine tar. Anyway, it's like this black, really bubbly, viscous stuff.
Okay.
that is coming, that's seeping out of the rock. And this thing is huge. This is probably over 20 feet high. And it's really, you can't get you can't get an impression of how big it is. But that was the first big thing besides the wiki up that we saw when we first went up there, when we
What was your interpretation of that, if any?
I'm like, holy crap, is that the blaze?
Okay.
Because it looks like a blaze. I mean, it's a mark on the rock, and it's very visible and very pronounced.
Okay.
So then I got completely sidetracked the first time I went by this tar bolt. I was like, maybe that's what the poem is directing.
Got to go digging in that, huh?
So we dug a 25-foot hole underneath it. No, I'm kidding.
with your gloves,
right? So we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. Okay, so this is the sign. These poles are remains of the dwelling called a wiki up. This structure, I love how they literally use the word structure. I'm like, oh yeah, great. Was once covered with bark. It's invisible from below, that's for sure. It may have been used as a lookout. Seldom preserved. It's protected. It's protected from the elements in nature, but it's also protected officially by, the National Park Service and the BLM of Dillon.
So this is on BLM land.
This is on BLM land, yes.
Which in my opinion is good. I like that.
But here's the thing, and it gets back to that whole easement thing in Jason Dent's audio of Forrest with the Playboy thing. He starts talking about easements. It's like, the cave. So where does the National Historic Place begin and end? Is it this whole arena, or is it just the wiki up? Is it the cave? Cave is in the word, or in the name. So the cave is protected, but what about what's in front? What about the easement? So these are all interesting questions and things that, if this is the right place, that Forrest must have been thinking about. How can I get away with hiding my treasure here, and not interfere or break the law?
That falls into, that falls into what the question we'll probably all get into, is what makes this place special to him. If this is a place, then it's got to be a place that has some kind of meaning to him. We don't know. We don't know what that is. It could just be the whole entire Rocky Mountains in general, but if this is a place that is special to him, how does that fit into that? And he was going to make it happen no matter what.
Right.
Then again, he's got to skirt the laws a little bit, and the wording of the law. As an English professor, you'll probably, and Joel Lewicki, where's our resident lawyer? He could probably have fun with that. But
thanks, Luca.
We're moving again. Here we go.
All right. Back to.
We got Davio 22, my brother from another mother's in here. Zozo Rocks, Minotaur Marino jumped in here a little while ago, just saying hi to all them. Rodney Greenway's in here. All right, we're back at the entrance.
Not in the hole that we call an office.
All right.
So
is there any way, like towards the end of the show, you could give us a sneak peek into one of your escape rooms?
Sure. Yeah, we'll go.
I think people would like that.
We'll take a walk into the weirder stuff. Is the 80s room, which is the storyline takes place in 1986 in a cabin in the west side of Michigan. So all of our stuff is Michigan and history based.
Cool.
So we'll take a look at it. Okay, let me get some power here. Okay, so the next thing, so now we know where we're at, but there's some things I didn't expect to see. One, I expected to see the wiki up. I didn't expect to see this stuff, this tar that's seeping out. And notice, okay, so we saw the big tar bolt, right? And that's a lot of tar.
Is that directly above, or that's outside and then to the left?
It's outside of the cave and to the left. It kind of makes the outer edges of the shadow box. So it's like the west wall of the shadow box. So, that night, we're thinking, we're trying to figure out, because it's like, this is a new phase. If this is the place, this is a new phase of the poem. Like, it's like, okay, now we're hitting on stuff that we never knew about. It's like, okay.
Yeah, your boots on the ground. You figured out the first few clues. Rocking chair ideas can lead one to the first few clues, but a physical presence is needed to complete the solve. I'm paraphrasing that. I may not get it exact. So now your boots on the ground. You're sitting there going over the rest of the poem in your head and going, what the hell do I do next, right?
So I woke up in the middle of the night at the hotel in Dillon, and I was like, tarry scant. It's not
you
Terry's.
Didn't sleep there? You didn't sleep there?
Oh yeah, no, we slept right under the wiki
right,
up.
Right in there. Okay.
I don't think we never really
Did you
saw
and Jay Spoon?
So we never, I don't think I'd want to be on the side of the mountain at night. There's no bears. We didn't really see any animals outside of birds and some little marmots and stuff like
But you
that.
see animals. You want to see animals,
We
right?
just, we saw animals, but no animals you wouldn't want to see,
Right.
I mean, so
like a skunk or a big spider.
right. And it's not bear country. So, and oddly enough, even though it's called the Big Sheep Creek Backwater Byway, there's no more bighorn sheep in this area anymore.
No,
No
byways, no big sheep, nothing.
So anyway, so we got this. So I'm like, it's not Terry Scant, it's Tari Scant with Marvel. So I'm like, there's bits of tar that are behind the wiki up, and the wiki up is the Marvel. So I'm like, why would he say but Tari Scant with Marvel gaze? I'm supposed to look closely at this. Well, I failed to recognize something. The first 20 minutes I was up there, I was looking at the wiki up, and there's this pile of rock here. It's the post. It's the support post for the wiki up.
Don't move that. Don't move
that. No, I know I did. But you know what I did? I looked. I kind of peered in. There's a little hole there, and there was a trowel.
Somebody's like digging tool in there.
Yeah. And I was like, what is this doing here? And then I kind of picked it up and I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't touch this because, maybe it's an artifact. And
Did it say property of Dale Neitzel?
It's old. So,
right, okay.
And also you'll notice here that here's one of the pieces. Yep. This was up there and probably for a very long time. Yeah. So then I put it back. And then again, that next night, I was talking to Sherry. I was like, yeah, and I found this trowel that was at the base of the. She's like, you didn't tell me that? I'm like, well, I felt like I probably shouldn't do it. She's like, well, in his book, when he talks about like, please touch, do not touch, like your initial reaction was, and probably everyone else's too, is that it's probably part of the wiki up and you shouldn't disturb it. Right. But she's like, but what if that's the paddle? There'll be no paddle up your creek, right? But there will be one down your creek, and I hid it for you. And so if you look quickly down, your quest to cease. But, and this is a conditional, right? Yeah. But Tari Scant with Marvel gaze, look closely. If he in fact left this paddle, which was found right here.
Is that the actual picture? No,
this is the actual.
That's the actual trowel. Okay.
This is the actual trowel.
Yeah, that looks old.
What if this is the trowel? This is the paddle of the poem, and this is the reason all along he would never confirm nor deny whether or not he buried it, because it's part of the puzzle that you have to figure out on your own.
Right. Well, I got a question just came in here from Tony Driver. I want to address this one. He said, flip side, where's the blaze in this solve? He's just asking.
Oh, we're getting there.
Okay. So we're going to get there, Tony.
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned it at the very beginning of it, but
okay.
Yeah. But we'll get back to it.
I'll try to speed things up here.
No, you're good. You're doing fine. We're
okay. So keep in mind you have a comparative thing going on here. You've got the major amount of tar, which is the tar bolt, which is but then to call this Tari Scant by itself in a vacuum would be a stretch. But you have a comparative thing of a lot of tar versus Tari Scant, a little bit of tar. Yeah. So that kind of further confirms for me that he could get away with calling this Tari Scant because there's lots of tar here. So it's like a comparative thing.
Like focus more on the little bit of tar.
Yes.
What you're thinking is kind of your
with Marvel, because the wiki up is a marvel that it's lasted 200 years.
That contrast.
Yes.
But Terry Scant or Tari, however you want to pronounce it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, so I'm so focused on this, I forget that what I originally told Forrest when I sent him my first email, which is that the sun would shine down on a certain day, or a certain time of day over the cave and mark the spot. And we looked everywhere, and I completely disregarded my solution. My original solution, which is using the sun. But on the last day, I stood up, and this is a view from the entrance, or like the threshold of the cave, looking down the mountain.
Looking out, yeah.
And I'm like, holy crap. And it was a sunny day. This is another day when it was cloudy,
Yeah.
but on the last day it was very sunny. And there's these two huge trees, these Douglas firs
Oh.
that are bending into an X. And this is what I see. And I'm looking down, I'm like, dude, that's X marks that's an X. And it's right in the center of the shadow box.
So you're looking out from the shadow box. Now you've
I'm looking in
reversed direction.
This is yes,
Yeah.
and this is the middle. This is in the middle of the shadow box, dead middle, looking down mountain. So
Looking back where you walked up from.
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yep, you got it.
Got it.
Looking north, actually, and then the sun. I realized the sun because we were there, pretty close to the summer solstice. So the sun was pretty high, but as the days go on, I started doing some analysis, and in the winter, the sun drops below the back of the mountain, and the sun never from like March to or from like late October to March, the sun never shines on this area of the mountain. This is in complete shadow during the winter. So
Right.
the only time, if this is in fact the blaze, where you have to found the blaze, where
Right.
if this is the X, if you found the missing letter from the poem,
Right.
and you use the sun and you say, okay, I'm going to found it like a machine, right? Like a foundry.
Okay.
And it shines at a certain time down the mountain, and it would mark the spot on the ground where and now I believe he buried it, because I found this paddle, because he said, but tarry scant with marvel gaze before you look quickly down, time based, the sun is moving, look quickly down your quest to seize. So this is interesting. This is what I saw on the last day of my first trip, but we didn't have time because we had to catch a plane in Salt Lake City. So I'm like, well, we're gonna have to come back. So, the other thing, since we're talking about the sun, you could see here, there's a cleft in the cave ceiling where rockfall has, it's kind of collapsed, and it's kind of created a big mound in front of the.
Let me talk.
Oop, you're dropping out. Is that me or is that you?
It might be both of us. I don't know. I've got you
okay.
back. No, it's saying my internet connection is unstable. Well, that's weird.
Okay.
We're good. We're back.
So this is Jay sitting next to the X tree, looking back south toward the cave mouth.
Yeah. Yep.
And you can kind of see the impression.
So he's facing north, and you're facing south.
Correct.
Towards the cave. Okay.
Yes. And then so only in the summer, it's like this is where the sun would shine down.
Yeah.
Down above the cave.
And this is looking from the road back up towards the wiki.
You got it. Yes. Uh-huh. So that kind of, for me, kind of answers why he's always been saying, it's winter time now, so time to pack it in. And I think it's for security reasons too, but I think for a bigger reason, I think it has something to do with the actual solution, which is you can't find it in the winter because the sun is kind of an integral part of it.
Kind of why you think he said his gut feeling it would be found this summer. Or
right.
Well, you got Iron in here just asked, how come you didn't backpack up a metal detector up there?
Oh,
did you?
I did. Yeah. And it's still up there. I put it up there last year, and it was still in the same exact spot I put it this year. So, so no paddle up your creek, because I left one down creek. Wise and found the blaze equals found the blaze is repeated. The first time is, if you've been wise and found the blaze, create the trail to get there, because there's no groomed trail, so you have to blaze a trail to get there. If you've been wise, you go up until you see the sun, because you have to keep, the end is ever drawing nigh. So if you're wise to know that the sun has something to do with it, keep going, and then you'll find the cave and you'll find the sun.
But could the X trees, your Douglas fir trees, could that not be your blaze?
It could be, but I think it's a little more complicated than that, because I think what you have to do is you have to found the missing X, and you build the blaze. Changing the tense for me.
Well, is the sun building the blaze for you, or are you actually building the blaze?
Well, I think that you're making a machine with the sun. It's almost like a sundial. So you've
got to be in the right spot, looking at the blaze, and then the sun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you look quickly down. It's time sensitive, the sun, and below the soft dirt, below the X tree. And then don't tarry, because tarry scant with marvel gaze still means what that means on the surface. Don't spend a lot of time looking, because you got to use the sun, and it's gonna drift, right? Um, but it
So
also means
we're getting away from the tar bolt or the tar in the wiki up cave, and we're transitioning it, or were you kind of
it's
reinterpreting on the fly?
well, everything in the poem to me has double meanings. For instance, the no place for the meek is Big Sheep Creek, but it also means you're going to have to go into this wooded foresty area on this side of this
Sure.
mountain. So
Or
everything
you're actually going to have to get out of your car in an area you're not familiar with,
right. And I just feel like every single line has multiple meanings, in my solution.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
in this case, you can say, but Terry Scant with Marvel gaze, and mean, don't spend a lot of time, looking at this thing. But it also means, but Tari Scant with Marvel gaze, so it's
What is your interpretation of the word with then? You being an English guy.
Well, Tari Scant is with Marvel here. They're a couple.
Okay.
You
Can it also be to describe the instrument used to perform an action? Like I cut the cheese with the knife. I cut the cheese.
I mean, I guess. I mean, I'd have to think about that in that context a little more.
Yeah. So you could be standing at your Terry Scant, looking in a specific direction, and with Marvel gaze, you're using the wiki up to focus yourself in a particular direction. And you're looking in that particular direction. Now you see your cross trees.
And I tried that too. I thought, well, maybe they're the ones doing the gazing. Right. So I was looking at, I worked it every which way. So then I was thinking, okay, well, if it's time sensitive, then it's a 24 line poem, and he says, look quickly down, your quest to cease that's like it would be like 3 o'clock. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe you have to be up there at 3 o'clock when the sun shines, and where the shadow is cast by the X tree. But I tried that, and it didn't work.
Well, I mean, DeCall Thomas is a big proponent of time in the poem, based on there being 24 lines, 24 hours in there.
I mean,
a lot of other things. So depending on where the blaze is in there, that could be relative to the specific time. Yeah,
I totally worked that angle too. I mean, so it's like, so that's kind of. That's kind of where I'm at with, I'm kind of like I feel like the X makes sense. It has something to do with those trees, I believe. I haven't been able to, I'm stumped, so this is not the solution where I'm, I pull out the treasure at the end, I'm like everybody else.
It's sitting on your lap. You're not ready to pull it out.
So we'll go back to the first stanza. It's when I start reading the first stanza in the context of knowing this place, it really makes sense. As I've gone alone in there, and with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret. So it's like I could see him going in there alone. There's nobody else around. He's already, he said it himself that he yelled out loud and laughed out loud, when he got back to his car. He could
you were there for a couple of days, and there was only a few cars around. Yeah.
He could easily do that without a soul ever seeing him do this.
Sure.
Because it's one of the remotest areas of an already very remote state of Montana.
Yeah.
He can keep his secret where, because it's already a secret. It's a secret in the physical fashion, because it's a secret. It's hard to find. It's very difficult to find.
How many people know about it?
Even when we knew it was there, we had a hard time finding it the first time.
Yeah.
And so, but it's also an official secret, because the U.S. government had decided to make it a National Historic Place, and then promptly hid its location. And then hints of riches new and old. I mean, for me, it makes sense that the riches new and old could include the wiki up. So.
Yeah. Well, Minotaur Marino says in here, he says, love this dude and think he brings a great perspective to the chase. And I agree with what Minotaur is saying. What about Fenn saying no man-made structures? What is your opinion on that?
Because I think he's, just as we all know Forrest is, he's very wily with his words, and he's very specific. He doesn't say that his poem or his puzzle is not associated with any structure. He specifically says the treasure is not associated with any structure,
or it could be the treasure specific location is not associated with the structure.
And so like, to me, it never entered my mind to, I mean, I use the metal detector around it, but I never disturb the wiki up.
Yeah.
I never, it's like, for me, I don't believe he would ever like bury it, underneath. And this is my warning to everyone. Please, if you do decide to go up there, understand that this is a national treasure.
Yeah.
It represents a part of Native American history and a part of, our land's history, and it's made it this far. We don't need any people going up
Sure.
there and
Yeah.
messing with it.
I
So
agree.
remember, have the utmost amount of respect for this. And I've been up there several times, and it feels like a second home now. It's like I'm so familiar with it, but never once did I mess with it, and I don't think Forrest would ever do that.
And if
So
you find a metal detector, leave it there.
yeah, good luck finding that, by the way.
Refresh the batteries and leave it there, please.
So yeah, it's like I never once thought it was ever anywhere close to the wiki up itself. I think it plays a role in the puzzle, but I don't think it's associated with the treasure in the respect that he hid it anywhere close there. It's on the easement. In other words, I believe it's within the shadow box area, but I think it's not in the cave or close to the cave. It's out in the woods. It's if you were brave and in the wood, I think the last stanza, if this is the right thing, your effort will be worth the cold. Well, you don't want to be in the warmth or the shelter of the cave, because I've been up there when it's pouring raining, and it was like we were dry as a bone, because you're completely protected. But you have to go out, right? Your effort is worth the cold. If you are brave, and that has double meaning too, because it refers to the Native Americans, and in the wood, I give you title. So if he was using that last stanza when he wrote that poem referring to this place, then that means that it's almost like telling you it's not in the cave. It's out.
Yeah.
You have to be out in the wood.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of how, so, to sum it up here, I find it interesting because when I look at the pictures from the Thrill of the Chase, it just feels like this photo that's on the internet, of the cave. It's like, it's got that dark regions in the back.
You can imagine the Native Americans out there 200 years ago or longer, having fires out there. And
yeah, I mean, the fire pit, the fire pit it like lines right up with Gypsy magic. And it's interesting because it's like, little Forrest is hiding under this wagon, and it happens to line up with where the wiki up is. And it's like these two wagons here, they match up with the two kind of indentation holes over here. Mm-hmm. And then if it's the light, this is what I would think would be the light shining down instead of smoke. It's light, and it's shining down below and casting a beam above the cave.
So were those like what you would consider subtle hints in the book? You think that kind of gives you confidence, or
look, because I believe that it's near this cave. Mm-hmm. And it has something to do with this area. I mean, I look at this picture and I feel a familiarity when I look at these pictures with. I mean, I've been there, and so these photo or these drawings, they give me a feeling of the place. I mean, that's kind of how it looks. And it was really interesting when Jeremy pointed out that the one photo, or the one
Jeremy
drawing,
Parnell you're talking about,
yeah, pointed out the fact that the lumberjack drawing had actually been extended.
Modified,
Well, why would Forrest want that extended unless he was trying to send a message about because they all have the same black background, mm-hmm. and they're all just about the same. They're wider than they are tall. And so if he was using this as a metaphor or as a signifier to say, hey, this is what it looks like.
Interesting. Yeah.
So when I look at that, I go, yeah, that's him. Hey, look, he's a puzzle master. This stuff has to mean something to somebody about the right solve.
Yeah, I think Forrest Fenn has said that Alan Polt basically drew a lot of these images based on, guidance from Forrest Fenn a little bit, and reading stories and stuff like that. But so, yeah, I get what you're saying.
So, when you're talking about the mirror imaging, the place where you begin, it's like, the
T.S. Eliot.
T.S. Eliot. It's like, this anticline at the beginning of Warm Waters Halt is the same water that cut this out, was the same water that cut the depression of the cave out. Yeah. So it's like, this is the beginning, this is the end. I mean, you've got the map that has the interlocking yin yang double omegas in the general, it's within that area. It's right here. So then, I go back to the book clues and I say, my church is in the mountains and along the river bottoms. Well, that's interesting. So if this is his church, because it feels like that when you're up there, if you feel like you're in a theater, if this is his church and along the river bottoms, well, what happened to all the stuff that used to be here? Well, it's now along the river bottoms of Big Sheep Creek, right? Because it carried it away.
Well, that leads me to another question then. I hate to cut you off, but did you have to cross Big Sheep Creek to get over there?
On a nice, wonderful, graded bridge.
There was a bridge that's there. Okay.
Yeah, because we actually parked a little bit up the ways because I didn't want my car. We didn't want our car right in front of this because I didn't want to draw attention. So I parked quite a ways away. So we actually walked across the bridge. But it's just it's a nice bridge. This is a very well groomed rock road. Right. Okay, so borders, it's like he mentions borders. This all takes place right on the Continental Divide. Yeah. In a very remote area. Two can keep a secret if one of them is dead. I mean, we have Dead Man Creek. Yeah. That's interesting. We are but sheep following the dictates of other minds in My War with Me. I mean, he right there. I mean, it's like if he's calling us out as sheep, Big Sheep Creek, no paddle up your creek, Big Sheep. Yep. He's basically saying you are the sheep that are following the dictates of my mind. I mean, that's metal enough to strike the trail. This is an interesting one because this is actually right in the inner sleeve of Thrill of the Chase. Yep. And he's like, a lot of people get lucky, but it'll take metal enough to strike the trail and, to make a discovery. Well, that's
resolve, tenacity.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Well, that's from Much Ado About Nothing, Shakespeare. And it's actually metal enough to kill the cat. It's actually kind of a variation on Curiosity Killed the Cat. And I just found it interesting. Metal enough, like, why would he say that? Why would he pull from that particular play and that particular quote? And then I started kind of getting kind of a different feeling from it. Like, well, what if he's saying the ninth clue is to find that paddle? It's not metal enough, meddle. It's metal. If you have just enough metal, which I've left you, to strike the trail, which is the trail of rock that's next to the X tree, you'll make an amazing discovery. So Catcher in the Rye, I think, is a reference to the fact that this is not a banned place, but a censored place. I mean, I think he's calling out Catcher in the Rye because it's probably one of the most famous banned or controversial books from a perspective of institutions trying to suppress people reading it because they thought it was too racy. And sure. I kind of see that
again why he. To me, the whole important literature chapter is about questioning what really is important literature.
Right. Yeah.
People give me a hard time because I have a copy of The Outlaw Trail, right. and I'm the poem purist. But I look at that book and I go, okay, why was it mentioned? Is it mentioned to me for the way it is written? It is written as an illustrated guide to history. Right. It's more of an interesting way. It's not a dry book with no pictures or illustrations or anything in it, where it's just a history book. And I hated history in school because it was dry and it was boring. But that book, if you read it, the way it's written, how it's written is more interesting than having to read things like Catcher in the Rye or having to read For Whom the Bell Tolls or A Farewell to Arms or F. Scott Fitzgerald, what is that book now?
The Great Gatsby.
The Great Gatsby. I mean, those books were dry.
Yeah.
This book is an illustrated guide, to that area. And that's more interesting to me. So what's really important literature? And I know I'm going off on a rabbit hole here, but yeah, I mean, I think that's an important thing he's trying to point out in Catcher in important literature, in my opinion.
Yeah. So, and for me, Catcher in the Rye, I think is indicative of this place we're going to, which is this is a book I can get behind, but you can't read it. It's like hey, this Wickiup cave is a great place to visit. Unfortunately, we won't tell you where it's at, and you got to bend over back. I would have never in a million years have ever found myself here if it wasn't for the fact that the poem let me here, Sure. So it's like, and then finally, and there's many other, I'm just kind of abbreviating my book clues, but Farmer in the Dell, the Bessie thing. It's like anytime I ever read that, I always found the funny, the part about, the cow and then the dog. And then it's like, it's for me, it always smacked of, the cow begets the farmer in the dell. And it's crazy that, Dell is the last town that
Oh,
you get off
yeah.
on at the Dell exit on 15 to go,
There's a
start the.
flight strip right there. Forrest could have flown right in there.
This is the only flight strip
Yeah.
and within miles, and it just happens to be right. I mean, you could get in a car and drive straight to it and be there in half an
Yeah.
hour.
So what is this place here that
This is a one room schoolhouse. It's one of two
oh.
businesses. There's the general
What
store,
did it
which
say
is
above the door? Did it say anything
that's
above?
yes, it's yesterday's cafe. It's not cafe, but it's CALF
No.
hyphen A.
It doesn't say he who teaches a child labors.
No,
without
it does
any-"
not. But they still have the chalkboard, they still have the desk. It's
That's
they
cool.
still have the
Cool. Very
ABCs
cool.
on the other really funny thing about this is for as long, I mean, I think since they've been open, they sell posters of that photo of the French trapper whose body was found intertangled with that moose in
I don't think I've ever seen that.
so in Glacier National Park, there was an incident where 18 years prior, this French trapper went out hunting, never saw again. And then 18, 20 years later, somebody happened upon his body, and they had figured out based on, there was this moose bones and a human bones.
Oh no.
And he had, his gun had misfired, and then he shot the moose right when it was on top of him, and they believe that the moose fell on him, and then he died.
That's crazy.
And so they have a photo of it, and they tell the story, and they sell these little posters, which I always kind of thought was interesting. It was like, hey, you
did
got
you
this
get one?
dead French dude. Oh yeah, I got one.
Okay,
Yeah, we're gonna put
cool.
it in the
Right on.
escape room. So
Nice.
the other thing is, I mentioned it, but Forrest, he's a game master. It's like, why would he publish an email address if he didn't plan on wanting to interact with people?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
he prominently, if he didn't want to be messed with and he didn't want to mess with other people, he wanted to make this a game where it was interactive, and he was going to modify the things he was saying publicly based on what people were sending him. He knew this. He knew that people were going to send him his solutions, and he was going to be able to mess with them if he wanted to. Maybe he waited years before somebody finally sent, he said what back in, was June 2018, that one interview where three times in the 8 years, somebody had sent him interesting stuff and then never heard of it.
Well, he said those key words or whatever.
Keywords,
yeah.
Which, the other thing is that, because he had done that interview like right before I contacted him for the second time in June.
Sure.
And I in my mind, again, of course, confirmation bias, but I was like, well, maybe, he's probably frustrated because it was like, and that's why I think Dizzy Dean was important, because I was like, maybe this is him pulling out all the stops, right? Pulling out all the commas. It's like no more pausing. This is my last best effort to catch this guy's attention, because he's in the right area, and I've got to do something that he can kind of understand and maybe get. But it's always plausible deniability with Forrest.
Sure.
He could come back, even if I found it. He could say, oh, I wasn't writing that.
Yeah, I didn't give him any special hints or anything like that.
Because it's plausible deniability.
Yeah, I think that you've got to rest a little bit of your laurels on the fact that if he's doing that, then you got to really believe that he wants this found before he passes.
I think he does. I maintain that.
I think he does too. Yeah.
So, and then why the map? Why in 2013 did he publish a map? Well, I mean, it's like if you believe in the treasure hunting code, but 13 is like a treasure hunting number, and it actually that's why did he use these magnetic north things or whatever what was the purpose of that?
And it crosses right over it.
Right over it.
Oh.
And then also, why would he point out all? He made such a big deal about color, the colored map somewhere in the highlighted region. Well, if you believe that home of Brown being Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest, well, it would be very important to know the delineation marks of the forest land and BLM land on a map when you're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So that, all this stuff plays into the importance of getting somebody to the right place, if I'm right. Those that best adjust. It's like, I can't, and everybody does this, but I think we were talking about this, Sean, but I think he's adjusting too. He's adjusted. He's made adjustments.
Yep. We'll talk about that towards the end. But yeah.
Okay. So I'm near the end here, fortunately. So one thing I found an F and an S.
No. Yeah. Look at that.
And this is, and most of them had like hearts around it and stuff like this, but this was in the wiki up. So there was a
That's
lot of great.
in, where's that in the wiki up?
This is on the support post, the support beam.
Oh, really? Somebody actually carved in that.
Oh, tons of people have carved into it over the
Okay.
years,
Oh,
like
okay.
dating back to like the 1920s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I did kind of remark on this. I thought it was funny because it's like they kind of stand
Forrest
up.
and Shiloh.
Forrest and Skippy.
Or, yep, skip. There you go. Thank you.
So, okay, so this is why do I think this is kind of a summation. Why do I think it's the Sheep Creek Wiki Up Cave? Because it is a super duper magic bullet place, and I don't care if you think it's here or not, but it certainly fits all the criteria. Let's put it this way: it represents a metaphor for Skippy's life and death, and this is I haven't really talked about this yet, but I believe that there's a cruel irony in the fact that Forrest survived the war,
Yeah.
where he probably should have been dead at least a couple of times, and then his brother, of all people, dies in a stupid scuba diving accident
Yeah.
in the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
In Cozumel. And
Yeah.
he must have thought it, like, if this place, I believe this is a place that he found out from locals. He was looking for places like this with Skippy and
Yeah.
his dad.
So artifact hunting, everything else. Yeah.
Totally, it plays right
Yeah.
into it. It's like he would have won. If he got there early enough, he might actually, if he's been here, he might actually have some arrowheads from this wiki up.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. But
Sure.
I think that him and Skippy, on their way back home, they took the long way around through Idaho and Utah, and I bet that they stopped into this place. And if they did, then I think that this would be a very special place for Forrest. And I think he would see the cruel irony in the fact that this wonderful place that was carved out by the warm waters that eventually become the Gulf of Mexico, were the same waters that killed his brother. It's
Hmm.
like he had a
Yeah.
wonderful time, had a wonderful experience with his brother,
Yeah.
finding this place, which is not easy to find. I mean,
Sure.
back in the day, they didn't have photographs and stuff to go at. You just heard about it, and it probably took them some time. So this is probably a special place, and they realized just how remote and secret it is.
Yeah.
So I think when he says, two could keep a secret if one of them is dead. Well, dead man, again, all this stuff must have been working in his mind. It's like Dead Man Creek, my brother. It's like, this water is the same waters that killed him. The fact that, in the one story in the book, he talks about how his brother was dead in the water, in this plane, and they had to ship it back to Idaho. It's like,
Yeah. It
this stuff just kind of gels with me for a metaphor for
was
Skippy.
in Skippy being Skippy, I think the chapter of the book.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And then, it's a prime fishing spot. I don't think it's Blue Ribbon, but I mean, I've seen plenty of fly fishermen on this place. I could totally see him wanting to, camping here, going back and camping.
So there's a lot of ties into why this place could be.
Yeah, it's
Special.
all
Yeah.
listed here.
Yeah.
It's a Native American history with preserved
Mhm.
archaeological relics. So that's right in his wheelhouse.
Yep.
It's a place that the U.S. government is officially trying to hide, which I'll get to in a second. It's perfectly camouflaged, hence a secret place to keep a secret. So
Sure.
it's like this single place, it interweaves all of these reasons why it could be the super duper magic bullet place, because it all fits within the criteria of what Forrest deems at least important enough to talk to and speak to. So you kind of rounding up, this is probably the single most interesting thing that I've ever read from Forrest. It's an interview he gave in 2013 on the radio. This is the only time he ever kind of publicly talked about the BLM raid.
Yeah.
And I believe that was the catalyst, and a lot of people do, the catalyst for why he eventually went and hid the treasure.
Yeah.
And I think, here at the, he's talking about too many PhDs. The Bureau of Land Management came in and searched my house, 4 years ago. Somebody told him he goes, a cave in Arizona. Then at the end, he's like, so 4 years passed and I got a letter from them that absolved me of everything. And that was the end of it. It builds character. I just wonder what I'm going to do with all this character.
It's got to throw it right back at him.
Yeah, I could see him literally after that raid happened going, you know what? I'm going to shove this thing right
up
there
your ass.
And and
All said.
imagine, yeah, and imagine like if somebody actually did find it, they'd have to build steps, they would have to build infrastructure because people are going to pilgrimage there, right? They
Yeah.
couldn't ignore it any longer. They couldn't make it a secret. It would
Yeah.
then become a national historic place, inextricably and always forever in the future tied to Forrest Fenn. They
Yeah.
would have to do, they would, he would become a national treasure. And it's exactly what it's
What he wants.
it's exactly. And of course it has to be a place like this. It's not going to be out in a field somewhere or some random place below John Brown's home or some crap like that. It's got to be, it has to have significance. It has to mean something. And this is the type of place that means something.
But do you think that I get what you're saying in this whole, go back to that really quick.
Yeah.
This whole kind of snubbing his nose back at the archaeological community and everybody else, where he's saying too many PhDs in governments, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And if you go back and you read the Mother of Indiana Jones story that he wrote in reference to the Society of Academic Archaeologists, you'll get this whole, where I think Todd's coming from, in this whole attitude where he does want to kind of snub it back in the nose, in my opinion. I get what you're saying in that too. So I see how this ties in together, and I definitely like that. And what was I going with that? But I like how you're tying in why the place is special and all that. I get that. There's definitely a lot to it. It's fun.
So, and then just a couple of the early scrapbooks I find interesting. Yeah. It's like here's government, Alan Simpson, and here's Native American. Look, right. I mean, these are both representations.
And look at that wry grin on his face.
It's like these two are like kind of like the physical representations of. They're almost like they're like human metaphors for the Wickiup Cave. And then, and it's like Donald Rumsfeld, the Department of Defense, it's here's the government, the government embodied in a man that is the chief defender. And, he's sitting here thinking, it's like, I just hid something, in a place that you want to make a secret. Cause again, it's like that whole, like the metaphor for the government, here. And it's like, there's that seething, he's got to be pissed about that.
That is a horrible jacket too, Donald. I just got to say, that's a horrible jacket.
And I love the faux turtleneck. Those are the worst. Forrest, if you're watching, remember you have to remove all of these from your wardrobe. It's not good. Yeah,
get rid of it.
Just go, if you're gonna do a turtleneck, just go full turtleneck. Just like this is like very non-committal.
Go with the V-neck and a gold chain or something. Come on.
Okay, so then
wait, did you bring the trowel home?
Yeah. I ruined it.
Oh,
things I couldn't expect okay, so these are some of the things that I couldn't expect before going and finding this place. How well the place was hidden. I didn't know there was going to be a paddle that I should touch. Yeah. I didn't know what Tari Scant with Marvel meant. And there were two massive trees in the middle that make an X. I didn't know any of that stuff. This is not stuff I could look for in a map.
These are things that you have to be boots on the ground in order to find.
Yes,
you're not going to see them. Yeah.
And it's like, I think about that, the ultimate answer to Jenny's puzzle in her book, her cryptogram or whatever that was, where she's, he's like, things you probably hadn't thought about before you went.
If you're in the right spot, something that
will be obvious to you.
Hadn't thought of before should be obvious to you. Or
yes,
along that lines. I know I'm paraphrasing that.
Right, but it's like I kind of think about that. It's like, I never would have thought that there would have been a physical paddle. It's interesting. The paddle is the only physical thing that is mentioned in the poem. It's the only object mentioned in the poem. I mean, he doesn't really mention any other objects, does he? I don't know. I mean, it's just like, it's funny that
depends if we think paddle is a noun or if it's something else.
Well, I mean, I think it's a noun because I have the paddle. So this
else can have the paddle now.
So after, I ruined it.
Hey, some people say they've taken the blaze, like.
So Forrest never emailed me except for once, and it was a couple weeks after I got back from my first boots on the ground, July 16th, 2018. And I sent him some pictures of some bones that I found, on the side of the mountain. And he wrote me 9 minutes later after I sent him the email. And he wrote, the third photo is a mazilla of a vegetarian animal, maybe elk of deer. The other items I can't see well enough to tell, but they look like bones. F. Okay, that's good.
What is a Mozilla?
Now here's the best part. Mozilla is actually Maxzilla with an X, not a Z. A maxilla is a jawbone, and he used the scientific term for it, but he spelled it wrong intentionally, because when you put the word
there's those double L's, somebody's gonna love that.
But he spelled maxilla wrong. He left the X out.
Yeah.
He spelled it with a Z, and like if you go into Gmail and you type out Mozilla, it underlines it in red.
Right.
And it corrects to Maxilla. And the week before, I had sent him my adjusted solve. I told him that I got distracted and that I found the X trees. And then he responds with this and uses a Z instead of an X. I'm like, right, I got you.
Yep.
Never emailed me since.
Yep.
All right, that's it. I got the paddle.
You got it. You took it. Nobody else. You're going to get the paddle.
Yeah.
You got the paddle. Okay, so I'm just going back over here, and I know there was a question from Minotaur, and he wanted me to ask this later. Let me see if I get this whole thing right. But Minotaur says, having the gypsy illustration as important bothers me, because it seems to me that was definitely done by Alan Polt, and Alan Polt says no way his illustrations help solve.
That's completely acceptable. Remember, this
Sure.
is one little trick that I'm pulling out of my enormous deep bag of confirmation bias. I mean, think about what I just expressed was very developed and very detailed, and there's not any one thing that my solution hinges on. It's like I'm just using that the picture comparison as one little element that could or could not mean that I'm correct. Yeah. So, I would say that, and I understand what you're saying. I would go back to the whole Jeremy thing, where why would Forrest want to widen that if that background didn't mean something? It wasn't important. He would have just let it go.
I can at least confirm by seeing the original illustrations that the one that Jeremy was so adamant had been altered, which was the one that was in the epilogue about the lumberjack and all the different logs, Jeremy was in fact spot on how that thing was altered.
Yeah, I mean,
with having my eyes on it. So Jeremy's definitely, got a good mind when it comes to those things, and I can't question that, because I've seen the proof of that. Whether Jeremy saw those before, I can't confirm, but he was definitely spot on, brother. Now I got another one here. It says, Tom Sawyer, not sure Forrest Fenn deserves title of master. This is his first treasure search, unless I don't know something. What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
you're a puzzle maker. You have a place with, your escape rooms, which are really puzzles. So what is your thought on that?
Well, my term masters, it's almost like a dungeon master, in Dungeons and Dragons. Sure. It's the person who runs the game, right? He's not a master of puzzles, but when I say puzzle master, I kind of mean like game master. But yeah, you're totally right. I think he had many, many years to think about it, and I think he ran through all of the different scenarios that he could think of. So he did have that advantage. But yeah, how well of a puzzle writer is he? We don't really know, because none of us have solved it yet. So it's a good point.
Well, and that ties into, I've hinted to people that I want to do a panel discussion on adjustments within the chase.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tie in a couple different, Fenn tubers out there, one being yourself and one being Man Alone, who Man Alone, I think, had said something very similar to what I think Tom was saying here, was that we have no real indication that Forrest Fenn is a good puzzle maker. Yeah. We have absolutely zero. We don't know if this thing is perfect or it's a complete disarray, that we have nothing. We have nothing to show. No one's found it and come out and said, hey, it was perfect. We all think he's this perfect wordsmith or puzzle master, puppet master, everything else, but we have no proof of that. And Man Alone, I think I may be getting this wrong, but I think it was Man Alone that brought that up.
It's a little disconcerting when you start thinking about it, right? I mean, we could be so far off on our interpretation, and he just, had this, idea that just doesn't make any sense legitimately. Like if we were to look at it and go, really, that's what you meant?
That was
really?
that was what Warm Waters Halt was. That was what this was.
No.
Makes absolutely no sense. I mean,
yeah,
it's that whole balance between, you know, a little bit of imagination and too much imagination. Where is the fine line? Where
right.
is it? You know, we don't know where that is.
Right.
Just because he said, Einstein said imagination is important, and I sure had a whole lot of imagination, then we all think that we must use completely 100% our imagination. Who's to say that's wrong? Definitely not this guy, but I mean, it's
right.
all completely subjective.
Yeah.
So that tailors into where I want to go with next week's show, which I want to do a panel discussion based on adjustments. And I really, Todd, I don't know if you're available. I'd love to have you on because it really centers around when you were on K-Pro and Calazar's show, when you did your marathon. You talked about how a puzzle maker or a puzzle master or dungeon master or whatever has to make adjustments based on the feedback and reaction of those that are participating in their puzzle. And you made a very good point. And I thought that was the thing that I took out the most out of your being on the marathon was how you as a puzzle master have to make adjustments. And should we not consider that Forrest Fenn, because we have no way to confirm he's a good puzzle master, he's had to make adjustments over these 9 years. So I'd love to invite you. I don't know if you're available. If you're not, that's okay. But I'd love to invite you on that.
I'd love to. I have to look at my schedule because we're getting dangerously close to getting this new room open. So I might. It's going to get really busy for me in the upcoming weeks. But we'll talk offline about it because it sounds fun. It sounds like a great great conversation.
No, I think it will be, because we'll go in depth on what kind of adjustments has he made. You know, what kind of advice has he given us back in 2011? How has that advice changed? Does his change in advice negate anything he said before? You know, that is what the whole discussion is going to be about. And how does those adjustments from the architect or the puzzle master, dungeon master, Fenn, you know, how does that affect us all? I think that'll be an interesting discussion. I would love to have you as a panel member on that.
Well, thanks.
Well as a couple other people I'm reaching out to. So we'll go that round. I think I've caught up with, there hasn't been a whole lot of questions. There's been a lot of discussion within the chat room back and forth. And, you know, a lot of people are praising you for good thoughts and you know, they like your ideas. There's obviously people that go down the rabbit holes of, well, that doesn't make sense with this quote. And again, guys,
I knew we were going to get that, so that's fine.
Well, I mean, our interpretations, our individual interpretations of Forrest Fenn's words are never confirmations of his intent. They're just our interpretations.
Sure.
And all our opinions are going to vary, and we should have respect for everybody else's interpretations, you know, because we don't know what the right solve is. We don't know if he's a good puzzle maker.
But some interpretations, you have to admit, are pretty dumb.
Right, like the 9 clues or the 9 senses, and it's all about grammar. And there's some crazy stuff out there, but you know what? I try and keep an open mind.
Well, you know, I heard one today on Reddit. Somebody was just got back from boots on the ground in Colorado, and he mentioned a couple of spots, and people eked out that he went to some, is it Cleveland, Colorado or something like that. So they were like, oh, so you think Homer Brown is Cleveland, Colorado? And it's like, you know, that's the type of stretching, you know, for me, that doesn't make any sense, because it's like, what does the Cleveland Browns mean to Forrest? It doesn't mean anything. Remember, you have to have reasons. That's the key takeaway, right? It's, you have to, if you're landing on a particular clue answer, you have to have legitimate reasons that tie into
the poem.
And what Forrest, what it would mean to Forrest. Is the Cleveland Browns have anything to do with Forrest, even tangent? Well, even, you know, close? No.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
you would never find me in Cleveland, Colorado.
Okay, so I think I've caught up on all the questions and everything else that's in there. Do you have any last words, Todd, or anything?
No, I just want to say that it was a pleasure sharing my solution with everyone. And you, Sean, thank you for inviting me on. And it was a lot of fun. It was, I have to say, it was a bit exhausting going through it all.
It's a lot. It's a lot to get in 2 hours. I mean, there's a lot of information to put out there and talk about and go over the questions. It's a lot.
Yeah, so I hope people enjoyed it and can kind of see my point of view. It's hard hearing somebody else's solution because most of us are fixed on
Yeah.
ours. But
Yep.
I think if you step back for a second and kind of internalize what I'm saying and seeing how all the pieces fit together like a mosaic, then you can start to understand, okay, this legitimately makes sense as a possible place.
Hmm.
And if it's not this place, it's probably some place like this. That's, I
Yeah.
think, the other thing. So,
Yep.
but thank you so much.
No, absolutely. And I want to invite you to go back, after this and watch this and look at some of the chat room because you'll be able to see it. Probably won't be able to do it tonight because it takes a while to process all this, but over the next week or so, if you get an opportunity, go back and watch the video and you can comment, reply to some of the people in here. But I think also, I think Todd, you had said you wanted to start a thread over on Harry's forum to kind
Yes.
of, if you guys want to come over to Harry's and you want to post some questions and comments back to Todd based on this video, you're welcome to do that. It may be easier for Todd to respond there. So you guys are more than welcome to come over there, create an account. And if you don't have one, and talk with Todd over there and chat back and forth about this too. So
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So if anybody has any questions or want to discuss anything related to myself, I'll create a thread at Harry's. So yes, please do that.
absolutely. And when you put that together, I'll also put that link to that thread in the description below so people can find it easy.
Fantastic.
And then again, guys, I want to promote, we're going to do a panel discussion next week on the 27th at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, which will be about the adjustments. I'll get the title, figured out, and then I'll put the countdown for you guys in there. And then the following week, which is the 3rd of September, I'm going to be having Alan Kelly on the show, and he's going to be the guest host for us. We haven't got the title or anything yet. I think it's based around, why the treasure chest is in Yellowstone, I think is what he wants to talk about. And he's asked for a very special guest to come on there with him, and I have confirmed that person will be on. I'm not going to tell you who it is yet, but we will have a very special guest on with Alan Kelly on Flip the Script number 7 on September 3rd for you guys. So after we have the panel discussion the next week, then we'll re-promote that and get that one out there for you guys. So, okay, guys. Well, it's been fun. It's been real. I'm out of beer, so it's time to get out of here. And we appreciate all you guys coming in here in the chat room tonight and hanging out with us for the couple hours and talking about Todd Solve. We wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for you guys. We'd just be talking to ourselves. So we appreciate you guys. And I always like to ask at the end of the show, if you like the show, please give it a thumbs up. I don't care if YouTube likes it. I care if you like it. So give it a thumbs up if you like it. If you don't, there's the other button for you. No shame in that. So, and please leave your comments and everything else in the comment section down below if you have any, and we will catch you all on the flip side. Have a good night, guys. We'll see you.